Says Rashi, we're continuing Unit 7 once again, the Hilchah of surname Danger and Sirmos Montefiore. We're going to see Rashi's opinion about the relationship between Lotivtso, on the other hand, Leochla. The Breita said two things. One has to do with whether you were mezir the fruit from other people, and the other has to do with Shinui. Let's see what Rashi says. So Rashi is brought in the Gemara Yevamot, on the Gemara Yevamot. Says the Gemara Yevamot, we're not going to go into all the details now, but the Gemara says as follows. So this guy wants people to appreciate his fruit more, but he makes the dire mistake of not knowing what is a good sale. So he says, this is very good fruit. It's very young fruit, which gives a different tang to the fruit. It's only from the third year. This tree is planted 3 years ago. So a problem, right? That's Orla. So we say, no, he's just lying. It's not, I don't need to listen to that because he doesn't know, he's not aware that he's saying something that will actually be an Isur. And he wouldn't, right? I don't need to bother to think about it. So the question is, what is azikah? What are you talking about when we say azikah? Says Rashi, shel azikah miples meuzak eder saviv lo shomro v'hi shnat shvi'it. So we're talking about Sedeh Shamur, right? A place that was a field that's well guarded. And we're talking during Shemitah. So the guy says, well, I got this from the Jew who has, he's keeping his fruit. There's a good fence around it. You don't have just like strays running around that field. It's all protected, well protected from humans and animals. That's not a good thing. Shemitah. V'kashim. Now, based on the Rosh Mishans, it's all clear, right? So this makes a lot of sense according to Rosh Mishans, right? Because he says, well, you weren't allowed to pick from the fruit, and so the goat presumably was picked kederko after it was guarded. So the chorah, you're not allowed to eat. That's the fruit that you're not allowed to eat, right? Says Rashi, Kashiri, my yisur yeshkan. Rashi's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Right? Perfectly oblivious of the Isur. Right? So Rashi will not accept that this implies that there's any problem with something that's Shamur. Right? Let's have a look at Rashi on the Psukim. Tzfiach tzircha, filu lo zarata, v'yitzamcha min hazer shenafal b'beit hakatzir, hu karui safiach. Even that, לא תקצור להיות מחזיק בו כשאר קציר, אלא הפקר יהיה לכל. נזירך, שהזרת והפרשת בני אדם מהם ולא הפקרתם, לא תבצור. אותם מנך בוצר, אלא מן מופקר. So Rashi is aware of this limud, and Rashi even accepts it, right? Rashi writes out that which are you allowed to pick? Only the mufkar. Right? So we see the problem, right? So Rashi, what? It's like the opposite side. Right. It sounds much more like the Rosh Mishans, right? Says the Mizrahi, the Re'em explains this. Rashi, Hade katani b'torat kohanim lo tivtzor מן השמור בארץ אי אתה בוצר, אתה בוצר מן המופקר, אינו רוצה לומר אותו שהיה מופקר מתחילתו אתה בוצר, אבל אותו שהיה שמור, אף על פי שהפקרתו אחר כך אינך בוצר, אלא הכי כאן. כל זמן שהוא שמור שלא הפקרת אותו, יהיה אתה בוצר. אבל אם הפקרת אותו אחר כך, אתה בוצר ממנו כאחד מן העניים מבוצרים. ענבי נזירך שהנזרת והפרשת בני אדם מהם ולא הפקרתם, לא תבצור, אותם אינך בוצר, אלא מן ההפקר, שפירושו אלא אחר שתפקירם. The question is, I think there are 2 points that need to be pointed out here. Number one is, when I say you're not allowed to pick the fruit, let's say I put a fence around I close up the fences. I don't allow anyone to get into my field. They can't pick the fruit. Right. Now, then the fruit grows. Now it's properly fully grown. You can start picking. First week, I keep it closed. Then someone says to me, it's Shemitah. You really should be allowing anyone to come in and take your fruit, right? Say, it's a good point. it sounds like the Rishonim understand the Rosh Mishans would say, well, it's too late. You want to pick it now, you have to do the B'shinui. Rashi says, no. The way to do it is to do it in such a way that anyone can as well. So when you pick that fruit, you have to pick it. When you pick that fruit, it has to be in such a way that is hefker. But it doesn't mean, because Rashi sounds very surprised, right? He says, what do you mean? Just because the fruit, just because this land was protected, was guarded, was fenced in, you're not allowed to eat from it. So Rashi says, well, at that moment, you're not allowed. Although there's another element that's very strange here. What about, just because you're not allowed to pick, does that mean you're not allowed to eat either? Could it be that there's the proper way of picking? If you didn't pick properly, you're over on the Yisrael Tivtzor. Let's ask the following question, right? If, let's say, even according to Mizrahi, according to Rashi and the Mizrahi, you kept it fenced in and you left it like that. Now you picked the fruit. Okay, so you didn't Yisrael lo tiktzor. What should I do with the fruit now? The Rashi Mishnah implies that you're not to eat the fruit, but it's not so clear that that's what we're saying. What we're saying, our point is that you're not allowed to pick like that. Because our issue is not what are you allowed to eat, our issue is in what way are you allowed to achieve eating correctly, right? It could be, I just want to express the two sides here for a moment. We started from it conveys on the other hand, to say, okay, how do I achieve eating if I'm not allowed to pick? Now, there are two ways of phrasing that question. Way number one is, in what situation am I allowed to eat the fruit? What kind of tzira allows me to eat the fruit at the end? The other way is, since I know I'm allowed to eat, in what way am I allowed to pick? What's the difference in these two? Is it implied that if I do it incorrectly, the fruit will be asur? That's a different question, right? Once again, where am I starting from? I'm starting from, wait, it says le'ochla, but it says otivtzo. So in what way am I allowed to pick that will allow me to eat? And therefore, if I pick differently, I'm not allowed to eat. Or I can read it the other way and say, lotivtzo, but yes, le'ochla. If yes, le'ochla, and assuming I'm not going to eat, right, the fruit that fell on the floor, or that I'm not going to just pick a munch off the tree itself, okay, so how am I allowed to pick? And then my problem isn't how do I eat, my problem is in what way do I pick without being over on lotikzo. But if I went against that, so I was over and Isur D'Oraita of lotikzo. So I do tshuva before Yom Kippur. Am I allowed to eat the fruit? That's not relevant, right? So it could be that that's Rashi's issue, right? Could be, I'm saying Rashi, there are two elements here in Rashi. Number one is what the Re'im says, that he says, just because I shielded this fruit from other people doesn't mean that it becomes an Isur Olam. I could just make it hefker now and then eat it. That's number one. Number two is, just because I went against lo tiktzol doesn't necessarily mean that now I've disqualified this fruit from eating. It could be that's what Rashi is saying about the goy. The goy says this field was well guarded, it was well protected. The fruit was well protected. So yes, that's the worst thing you could have said. Fine, but does that mean you're not to eat the fruit? It just means that this Jew transgressed lo tiktzol. Right? Because he picked in a way that wouldn't allow, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean the fruit would be asur the achila.